Have you ever noticed something strange about people? They push. Not all at once, but little by little. A small disrespect, a small favor, a small request that feels slightly uncomfortable. At first, you ignore it. Then, it happens again and again. Until one day you realize something unsettling. They weren't just acting randomly. They were testing you. Testing how much you tolerate. Testing how far they can go. Testing whether your boundaries are real or just words. And the scary part? Most people don't even realize they're doing it. Today, we're diving into the dark psychology behind why people test your boundaries and what their behavior actually reveals about power, respect, and human nature. Because once you understand why people push limits, you start seeing the pattern everywhere. And more importantly, you stop being the person people feel comfortable testing. Stay until the end, because the final realization might completely change how you deal with people. The first thing to understand is that boundaries create structure in relationships, but structure is rarely accepted immediately. When people meet someone new, they unconsciously begin mapping the limits of that person. How much can I joke with them? How late can I reply? How much can I ask from them? How serious are they about their standards? This process isn't always malicious. It's instinctive. Humans constantly test environments to understand what behavior is allowed and what behavior isn't, and your reactions become the rule book. If someone pushes a little and nothing happens, the brain registers something important. That behavior is acceptable. So the next test becomes slightly bigger. Not necessarily because they planned it, but because your reaction created the boundary, or the lack of one. Another reason people test boundaries is to establish hierarchy. Every social interaction contains an invisible power balance. Who adjusts more? Who apologizes first? Who tolerates discomfort to maintain peace? These signals quietly determine status within the relationship. When someone pushes your limits, they are often observing one thing. Do you enforce your standards, or do you prioritize harmony? If you constantly prioritize harmony, the hierarchy slowly shifts. You become the one who absorbs tension. And the person who absorbs tension usually loses influence. Respect grows where standards are protected, not where they are sacrificed. There's also a psychological reward system involved. When someone crosses a boundary and faces no consequences, they experience relief. That relief reinforces the behavior. Imagine someone interrupts you repeatedly, cancels plans last minute, or makes subtle, disrespectful jokes. If you laugh it off every time, their brain associates the action with safety. No conflict, no backlash, no loss, so the behavior becomes normalized. The next step is usually escalation, because human behavior naturally expands toward the maximum space allowed. Now here's something darker. Some people test boundaries intentionally, not because they're curious, but because they're searching for control. These individuals understand that respect is linked to enforcement, so they deliberately apply pressure to see whether you push back. A manipulative personality often starts small, a slight insult disguised as humor, a request that invades your time, a guilt-driven favor. If you comply, they escalate. If you resist, they recalibrate. Their goal isn't always conflict. Their goal is understanding your resistance level. Once they know it, they know exactly how to operate around you. Another factor behind boundary testing is emotional insecurity. Some people push limits because they're trying to measure your attachment. They want to see how much they can get away with before you react. If you tolerate everything, they interpret that tolerance as proof that you won't leave. And strangely enough, that reassurance can sometimes reduce their respect. Why? Because part of human respect is tied to perceived independence. People respect those who appear capable of walking away. When someone feels completely safe from consequences, that psychological tension disappears. And without tension, respect can slowly decline. There's also the phenomenon of gradual boundary erosion. Most boundary violations don't happen dramatically. They happen in increments. A small request today, a slightly bigger expectation tomorrow. Then a behavior that once would have shocked you becomes normal. This slow progression is powerful because humans adapt quickly. What once felt uncomfortable starts feeling familiar, and familiar behaviors rarely trigger resistance. This is why people who consistently enforce small boundaries rarely face large violations, because they stopped the expansion early. But here's the part that many people struggle to accept. Sometimes people test boundaries because they sense internal hesitation. Boundaries are not just spoken. They are communicated through tone, posture, timing, and confidence. If you say no while sounding unsure, people feel the gap between your words and your conviction. And human psychology naturally explores that gap. It's similar to a locked door that looks slightly open. Someone might push it just to see if it moves. Confidence closes the door. Hesitation invites pressure. This is why boundaries must be consistent to be respected. But testing boundaries doesn't always mean someone is a bad person. Sometimes it's simply part of social calibration. People adjust their behavior based on feedback. When someone encounters a clear boundary, calm, firm, and consistent, most people adapt quickly. The ones who don't adapt reveal something important. They weren't interested in connection. They were interested in access. And access without limits is the dream scenario for anyone seeking control. When limits appear, those individuals either change or disappear. Both outcomes are valuable. So why do people test your boundaries? Because they're mapping your limits, because they're establishing social hierarchy, because behavior without consequences becomes normalized, because some people seek control, because insecurity drives them to measure attachment, because gradual pressure expands tolerated behavior, and because hesitation invites exploration. But here's the real insight. People don't respect the boundaries you announce. They respect the boundaries you enforce. You don't need to become aggressive. You don't need to create conflict. You simply need clarity, a calm refusal, a consistent response, a willingness to let people face the outcome of their actions. When boundaries are enforced early, respect forms naturally. And the strange thing is, once people realize you don't bend easily, they stop trying to bend you. Because human psychology always searches for the easiest path. And when your limits are solid, testing you becomes too expensive, so they move differently, or they move away. Either way, your peace increases. And that's the real purpose of boundaries.